I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream, I have a dream.
Okay, welcome everyone here today. I will declare the meeting open at 4:04. Disclaimer, members of the public are advised that recommendations to council contained within this agenda can be subject to change. Applicants and other interested parties should refrain from taking any action until written advice is received confirming council's decision with respect to any particular issue. Any statement or insinuation of approval regarding any planning or development application made during an ordinary council meeting is not to be taken as notice of approval. Anyone who has an application lodged with the Shire must obtain and should only rely on written confirmation of the outcome of the application and any conditions attached to the decision made by council. Council members and the community are reminded that should an exception resolution be passed, this has the effect of making the decision to accept the officer's recommendation stated in the agenda as the council's decision without change. An audio and visual record will be made by means of live streaming of these proceedings and uploaded to the Shire's YouTube page for viewing. Acknowledgement of country. The Shire of Harvey acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. And we pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and to their cultures and to elders past, present and emerging. Procedural motion. Councillor Gillett put forth the following: that Council suspend Standing Orders Part 8, Clause 8.5, members to indicate their intention to speak and to rise when speaking, to allow members to remain seated when speaking, to improve the quality of the audio recording of the meeting. Is there a second? Councillor Burgoyne. I'll put the motions. Anyone against the motion? Motion is carried. Item 2, record of apologies and leave of absence. Councillor Michelle Boylan requests to attend the Tuesday the 24th January 2023 Ordinary Council meeting electronically in accordance with Regulations 14C Part 2B of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996. I as the Shire President have approved this request and am satisfied that the location from which the member intends to attend the meeting and the equipment that the member intends to use to attend the meeting is suitable for the member to be able to effectively engage in deliberations and communications during the meeting as per Regulations 14C 5 of the regulations. We have apologies from Councillor Jackson. Leave of absence is nil. Councillor Boylan, can you hear us okay? Okay, we can't quite hear you, but as long as you can hear us, that's all good. Thank you. Item 3, applications for leave of absence. Nil. Item 4, reading from a book of learning and wisdom. Councillor Dickinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today's reading is from Martin Luther King Jr. The ultimate measure of a man, and I will put woman as well, is not where he stands in moments of conflict and convenience, but where they stand at times of challenge and controversy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dickinson. Item 5, declarations of members and officers' personal interest. As on the screen, Councillor Dickinson.
Yes, thank you, as on the screen.
Councillor Bromham.
Thank you, Mr. President. As on the screen.
Councillor Carboni.
Yep, same.
Councillor Crispin.
Yes, as on the screen.
Councillor Campbell.
Correct, thank you.
Councillor Lovett.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Are there any others, councillors? All good. Okay, item 6, response to previous questions taken on notice is nil. Item 7, public question time. Mrs. Ferguson, welcome.
Thank you. My questions relate to item 12.3.2 RV trial. In view of the fact that the public has not been asked for its opinion on the Christina Street Reserve being used for free RV parking, and in view of the fact that at its meeting on 23rd of August last year, Council voted unanimously to amend the officer recommendation from Christina Street Reserve to the Eco Museum site because, quote, Christina Street Reserve is currently a well-utilised space with open views to the estuary for current residents and reserved users, unquote. Will Council please consider either A, before making a decision on this officer recommendation, require public opinion to be surveyed to find out if using Christina Street Reserve for free RV parking is supported by the community, or B, if Council approves this recommendation, make the decision now that if free RV parking continues beyond the trial, the site in Australand will be moved to the Eco Museum, or C, delay the trial in Australand for 9 months, most of which will not be peak season for travellers, after which the Eco Museum site will again be available. So my question is, will Council please consider these options?
Yes, Council will consider that. Mrs Ferguson, yes.
Thank you. Question 2. An RV, as defined in the implementation plan endorsed by Council in August 2022, is, quote, a self-contained motorised recreation vehicle that provides inbuilt eating, sleeping, food storage, toilet, etc. And there is a picture of one on the front of that report. Caravans are not motorised, and I understood from discussion at that meeting and the agenda briefing that it was agreed that they would not be included in the trial. The proposed sites attachment to this agenda has a picture of a caravan on the front, and the agenda item states, quote, engineering surveys were conducted to ensure turning circles for caravan and tow vehicle up to 19 metres in length, end quote. Has Council approved that caravans be included in the trial? If so, what is the maximum length of towing vehicle plus caravan that will be allowed?
Mr Hall.
Through Mr Chairman, look, as self-contained, consistent with an RV as well. So the items that you raised in terms of eating, sleeping, toilet, if a caravan has those attributes, then there is no reason why they can't enjoy the sites like an RV can. As far as the size of one, I don't believe we've contemplated that, but so long as it meets the road traffic requirements, it would be suitable to state that. Mr Lustig, I'm not sure if you used a turning circle based on a particular size at all.
Yeah, we looked at a total length of about just over 13 metres, which is about just over 5 metres for a vehicle, towing, and about 6.5 metres for the caravan.
Sorry, the crucial word in my statement was that an RV vehicle is motorised and caravans are not motorised. It was my clear understanding last August that caravans were not being considered for inclusion.
Through Mr Chair, I'll have to go back through that previous report and see whether or not it was actually precluding anything that was motorised or whether it was allowing for both, but I would need to clarify that.
That's a question.
We will take that on notice.
I'm basing it on the definition that's in the implementation report. Thank you. Why has the car park north of Ridley Place been ruled out for the reason that it cannot accommodate a turning circle when there are 2 entrances and it could be made drive-through?
I'll take that one on notice too, thanks. Mrs Ferguson.
Last one, as there is no turning circle in the Christina Street Reserve, why was it not ruled out for the same reason as the car park north of Ridley Place was ruled out?
Similarly, if we're comparing turning circles for 2 different sites, I think we'll have to take that on notice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs Ferguson. Okay, item 8, petitions, deputations and presentations. Neil? Item 9, announcements by a presiding member or CEO without discussion. I would just like to congratulate staff on a successful event on the weekend at Ridley Place with Youth Chella, and also like to big thank you to our main funding partners of South 32, Southern Ports and Tronox, and also to all the other people who made the day such a success. So congratulations and a big thank you to all of those in the community. Item 10, confirmation of minutes. the ordinary council meeting Tuesday 20th of December 2022. The officer recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on Tuesday 20th of December 2022 as printed be confirmed as a true and correct record. Move Councillor Campbell. Second Councillor Lovett. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Councillor Coleman.
Just a question?
Yes, certainly.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just a very small amendment that in the acknowledgement of country, we do past, present and emerging. Could we add that into the minutes on an ongoing basis, please? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Coleman. Okay, with that amendment, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 11, receipt of minutes and recommendations from committee. And the recommendation that the minutes of the audit committee meeting held on Tuesday the 17th of January 2023 as printed be received and the recommendations contained therein be adopted by council. And just noting that the Chief Executive Officer notes an amendment to the annual report with the correct figures for attendance at the Dr. Peter Topham Memorial Swimming Pool being 13,000. Yep. Okay. Yep. Okay. Move Councillor Lovett, second Councillor Beach. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried 12-0 absolute majority. Okay, item 12, officer reports. Recommendations contained in the officers' reports were adopted by exception resolution with the exception of the following items. That the exception of 12.1.1, 12.1.2, 12.2.1, 12.3.2 and 12.5.1, which are to be considered separately. The officer's recommendation for items 12.1.3, 12.3.1 and 12.4.1 to 12.4.2 be adopted as the council resolution. Move Councillor Campbell, second Councillor Coleman. Not that there any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 12.1. 12.1.1 lease Harvey Brunswick Leschenol Football Club. Councillor Campbell, did you have an alternative?
I have a procedural motion that I'd like to put forward.
Alternative.
Alternative?
Councillor Campbell, yes. Yes.
It's an alternative.
Way to go.
That's the way I'm running with it.
Okay.
Okay. You want me to read that out?
Yes.
That this item be deferred to the March OCM to allow for the current community lease policy to be amended to include the provision of a maintenance and capital replacement reserve.
What's on the screen for community lease buildings?
Yes.
Okay. Second, Councillor Bromwell.
Yeah.
So the reason, given the need to have an agreed council policy relating to the creation of a reserve account for the financial contribution for asset improvement and replacement by community and/or sporting groups on lease-shy property. Is there likely to be any discussion on that, councillors?
I'll speak against.
Speak against? You wish to speak for?
Yeah.
Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. And I've asked for this item to be deferred to such a time as that Council has the opportunity to consider this amendment to the community lease policy. I think we're putting the horse before the cart, in particular for this lease for Harvey, the cart before the horse, we considered this lease agreement for the Harvey Brunswick Leisure Football Club. So at this stage, I don't have an issue in regards to the creation of such an account, reserve account for that purpose, but I do have an issue with it being instigated in this particular lease before council has the opportunity to consider this amendment in the current community lease policy.
Councillor Bromwich. Councillor Kamani, Speaker against.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm against the creation of any policy that in essence puts tax on sporting clubs in our shire. And to those in the media watching today and here present, if we're to adopt a policy like this that in essence taxes sporting clubs and in particular taxes sporting players, kids in particular, if we adopt something like this in this shire, then it will happen in every other shire too, because every other shire will adopt this policy as well. Though this particularly doesn't in particular relate to Harvey Brunswick in particular, because we're talking about a general policy, the fact that in the Harvey Brunswick lease, which is in the agenda today, the $18,000 a year would in essence send the club broke, and the club would have to shut the door. Put it another way, $18,000 a year would be another $180 you'd have to put on each player of Harvey Brunswick to play footy for Harvey Brunswick. Take that across other sporting groups in the shire, whether it be netball, and they tell me netball players pay up to $450 now a year in subs. Take that across other sporting groups and put the additional contribution that they'd be required to pay for asset replacement that maybe in 20 years' time you'll see a mass exodus of players out of the Harvey Shire going to neighbouring shires that don't have this policy. I think it's stupid, I think it's dumb, and I'm not going to support it. I won't support any policy that puts a tax on sporting groups.
There is another speaker for the motion. Speaker against. Councillor Coleman.
Thanks, Mr. President. Whilst I think a policy is probably a reasonable idea, this particular lease is for the club rooms only, very specifically the club rooms only. So therefore, to put aside, for example, $18,000 per year for replacement of lights in 20 years is replacing something that's not even in their lease, therefore not even within their mandate to look after. It's a shire asset. So I think we've got to be very careful if we're going to develop a policy and they don't have exclusive use. It's unlike a bowling club that has exclusive use of greens and lights that do have replacement funds. I think any organisation that shares those facilities and certainly doesn't have any jurisdiction, and the lease clearly states they only have access to those areas outside their club rooms, I think that's a bit of a nonsense and needs to be investigated further.
Any other speakers for? Councillor Bromwich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Tax on clubs is one way of looking at it. You could have a look at it the other way and say it's a tax on ratepayers if we don't do something along these lines. However, this alternate motion is designed to give time for the staff to develop a policy for all clubs that takes into account the things that have been raised by both Councillor Carboni and Councillor Coleman. I think it's very important to get it right. I think they're perfectly correct in that regard. But we can't live in the past, and there is not it needs to be from sporting clubs an understanding that they need to pay what it costs to pay whatever sport they're doing, and that includes maintaining the at least that 1/3 towards the facilities they have. The days of chook raffles, of collecting money, of going to the public when you get there is over. And I think we really need to look to the future with this, and I think this is exactly what staff are trying to do, to set our clubs up for success in the future.
Any other speaker for the motion? Councillor Boylan, for or against? And we can't hear you, Michelle. Yeah, there's still no sound. That's it.
Yes.
Is that better?
Yep,
Yeah.
there you go.
I'd like to agree with everything that Councillor Cavani has said. I'll be speaking, I'll be voting against this. At the end of the day, the kids in the community are the ones that are going to suffer because with everything going up, I see that families, this will be one of the first things they stop with everything else, being a financial strain at the moment, and they're the ones that are going to be hit the hardest. So I'll be not supporting this motion. Thank you.
Any other speakers for? Speakers against? For Councillor Dickinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will be for this motion. We actually aren't discussing a figure at this stage. We are just discussing that an account is set up, and I think that it is prudent for organisations that are using Shire facilities, and I am aware that there are organisations that are already doing this, although probably not officially with guidelines, but they are already putting funds aside. So this will actually be giving more structure and guidance, and I think that's what is needed in the community, so I will be supporting the motion.
Councillor Beat, speaker against?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I know we're speaking against for this reserve fund, but it means putting money into the reserve fund, and therefore we need to address what's in the lease. I see there's a great inequity in what's trying to be achieved. I understand why it's trying to be achieved, but swimming clubs are not putting money into a reserve fund for the replacement of swimming pools or liners or tiling or whatever. Skate parks get to use the skate parks for free. There is no fee for them to replace or repair the damage or the graffiti or whatever. Total inequity, and I don't think we should be even contemplating this at this particular point in time.
Any other speaker for? Councillor Lovett.
Thank you, Mr. President. Listening to all the speakers that are speaking against this, we're actually discussing the alternate motion, which is about deferring the report for till March, so that we can amend a policy. So it's not regarding. It's actually the alternate motion isn't regarding actual leases, funds, or organisations. It's about deferring this item. So I'm supporting that because that's what we're discussing at the moment.
Any other speakers? Councillor Gregor.
Please, thanks, Mr. President. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I read this is that allow the Shire officers to amend the community lease policy. So in March we'll be voting on a new lease policy which has been amended. So I think that we're going to be going around the table again in March. Now my biggest issue is, and I tend to agree with Councillor Carboni and Michelle Boylan's comments, is that things are tight in the community, and we're all about promoting healthy living and sport and rec with our younger people. And I feel that being involved in sporting clubs myself and see the numbers drop off, and the difficulty in keeping the subs or the fees low to let normal households to have their children enjoy sport, I think we're going to be putting a bit of a challenge if they have to pay any additional fees. So I also support what Councillor Campbell's saying as well. I'm a bit of a fence sitter on this one, but the last thing I want to do is prevent younger people enjoying sport as we all did when we were younger. And I know that there's facilities that cost money to maintain, but hey, council spends money on a lot of things, and I think recreation has got to be something that we focus a lot on. So it's for the better of the community, so I'll be speaking against the motion.
fine for fence sitting, Councillor Gregory.
Councillor voting.
Okay. Is there any other speakers? Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you for everyone's comments regarding this. Simply put, I didn't want council to be put in a position today to make a decision whether we're going to spend, make Brunswick or Harvey Brunswick Leisure Not Football Club pay $18,000. I don't think we're across the policy enough in order to make that decision today. So simply this amendment is allowing time for staff to go away and review the current policy with the view of implementing something along those lines, a reserve account, and then bring it back to us in October so that then we can make that decision. So we're not agreeing whether we're going to give a bill to Harvey Brunswick Leisure Not Football Club for $18,000. We're simply asking staff to go away and come up with some sort of amendment, maybe model it on other local governments that do similar things, and then bring it back to us in March so that we can make an informed decision moving forward, and then we can certainly look at the implications that it will have on sporting groups and community groups alike that lease our facilities. A lot of the discussion today is based around sporting facilities. There's also community groups that use our buildings as well. So I just ask council to take that in mind. Think about that the amendment is purely based on the opportunity for staff to go away, look at the amendment of this policy and bring it back to us to make an informed decision moving forward.
Okay, I'll put the motion. Anyone against the motion? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 again. Motion's carried 7-6.
Mr. President,
Councillor Beach.
just going back to the 7-6, could that be tagged on the casting vote of the show, President, please?
Yep. Okay, item 12.1.2, local government reforms, local government advisory board submission. We have the officer recommendation. Move Councillor Bromham, seconder Councillor Coleman. Is there likely to be any discussion, councillors?
Yes, I'll speak.
Okay, Councillor Bromham, would you like to speak for the motion?
I think this is something we don't have any control over, and therefore I vote for it because we either go down the pathway which is voluntarily, or we basically get told what to do by the state government. So I don't think we really have an option on this whatsoever. The only change that may occur is if this doesn't pass at the state parliament, in which case we will do as suggested the other week and stay as we are. Okay, that's about all I can say.
Councillor Coleman, seconder?
Agree.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Cavalier, speaker against?
Yeah, I'll speak against, and Councillor Bromham's probably right. It is fait accompli. The state government can do as they please. They always can do as they please. But I'm going to stand up for the people of the Shire of Harvey, and I think everyone else who disagrees with it, with what's happening here should do the same. We're a shire of 7 towns. To bring out a broad rule across all shires that, of the same band that we should just reduce from 13 councillors down to 9 and just take it sitting down, I think is wrong. So I'm going to stand up for the people of this shire and say that we should keep our councillors at 13. And because we've got 7 towns, we're not like the city of Bunbury where you can walk from one end of the shire to the other. We're spread out over a vast area, and all we're doing is going to burn out councillors who have to go to committee meetings across 7 towns. So I'll stand up for the people of this shire and say that we should stick at 13 councillors, and if every other council around WA did the same, maybe the Minister might have a different view and changed his mind. We won't when everyone just sits and rolls over.
Any other speakers for? Councillor Crispin.
As Councillor Orman said, that we have two options basically. This way is the most logical way, that way we're choosing on how we're going to do it over the next 2 terms. But again, Councillor Carboni is correct. If we all did stand up, there might be a chance, but the reality is we are going to go down to the 9 elected members, which is going to cause a lot more work to the councillors in the area, especially with the amount of big picture items we have coming up. So I'd like to agree with Councillor Carboni that is going to be a lot more work, and it would be great if the Minister did see how much more work is going to be carried into those 9 members, but unfortunately I've got to agree to the motion that Councillor Bonham said, because we don't really have a choice at the end of the day. It's better to do it this way than the alternative way.
Any other speaker against? No? Any other speakers? Councillor Bronwyn, do you wish to close? All good? Okay. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? 4 against? 5? Six, 5? 7, 5. Motion's carried 7-5. Absolute majority. Thank you.
Michelle had her hand up.
Okay, item 12.2, 12.2.1, temporary road closure, Paris Road at Forest Highway. Councillor Lovett, you have an amendment?
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment that I sent through was to include the words businesses and emergency service providers, because Grand Entrance and the Promenade are going to be affected by the closure of Paris Road.
Seconder.
Oh, sorry.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Crispin. Go, Councillor Lovett.
Sorry. Yeah, the information that we received is that Main Roads will work with the Shire and arrange for implementation of suitable temporary traffic measures of the local road network, should it be determined that there's been a measurable adverse effect on residents' amenity. The main roads that are going to be affected during the closure of the Paris Forest intersection is the Promenade and Grand Entrance. The houses along those roads don't actually access directly to those roads because of the slip lanes. My concern is that with the amount of additional traffic going through, that the businesses along those roads and the emergency services of SES and St John Ambulance could be severely affected in a negative way by the increase of traffic along there. If they can't get out of the road to get to an emergency situation, they need to be included in this so that we can provide that feedback back to Main Roads as well as those of the residents in the area.
Okay, so you're happy to move the original motion, and Councillor Crispin likewise? Yep. Okay. Is there Councillor Bromwell?
Question. Thank you, Mr. President. I think it's a very good point that's been raised here, and one of the things that can come to my mind is in the case of fire, have they considered being able to open the road again so that fire vehicles can get through if they need to?
Yeah, look, obviously councillors are raising certain things that will have to be passed on to the South West Gateway Alliance, you know, they've initiated the closure. We're going through the formality because it's a requirement of the Local Government Act. So the ball's going to be squarely in their court, and all this is going to be passed on to them, and they need to implement measures to address the concerns that have been raised.
Okay, Councillor Crispin, do you wish to speak?
No.
Is there likely to be any speaker against? So, put the amendment. Anyone against the amendment? The amendment is carried. Now becomes the substantive. I don't think there's any more to be added. Councillor Lovett. Councillor Crispin.
What if I just asked a question? Just based on this, just reading it, I'm just confirming that any damage which is occurred along the main roads which they'll be utilising, that will be covered by the Gateway Alliance. Is that correct?
Look, it's a bit of a tricky one. Obviously, the public roads are designed to take certain volumes of traffic and certain vehicles that may or may not have a permit. So, I mean, if it can be proven that the damage has been caused as a direct result of the closure, it's something that we need to follow up. But it would be hard to prove that.
Yep.
Councillor Bromman.
Question. Just following up on that question. When we do our road counts normally along the roads to be used, we would have designed our roads around the normal flow of traffic in relation to that. And obviously there will be a rather a big increase in traffic along those roads, which will basically wear them out a lot quicker. So how do we if we've monitored it prior and after, is that one way that we can gain evidence?
Yeah, look, the main thing that wears roads out is heavy vehicles. When you design a pavement for a road, you look at standard axles of trucks and vehicles. You don't even take the standard motor vehicle into account. So I suppose it's going to be the percentage of commercial and heavy vehicles and an increase in that once the road's closed. The majority of traffic is going to be local sort of traffic. In residential areas trying to find alternative ways. So I think the commercial type vehicles are going to stick to the main drags, which are designed for that sort of traffic anyway. But yeah, look, obviously we've got statistics on the percentage of commercial vehicles using those roads now, and if there's a marked increase, then obviously we'll just follow that up and work with the main roads in the Southwest Gateway Alliance.
Thank you.
Okay. I will put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. 12-0. Okay, item number 12.3.2, recreation vehicle friendly trial. Officer recommendation. Councillor Lull moving. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Dickinson.
I have an amendment.
Amendment. Councillor Campbell.
Yes, I do. I wish to amend the officer's recommendation to reflect in part 2 that council endorses the Brunswick Junction showground site as the preferred site for Brunswick Junction, and in part 3 can I add on the end, or until the Eco Museum site becomes available.
Is there a second of the amendment? Councillor Bromman. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Bromman. The reason I asked for the showgrounds to be considered for this site is that I believe it's a better site in that there is some hard standing there. I went out and did a site visit the other day. So behind the where the tennis courts are, there is already some established hard standing for these RVs and or caravans, and it's also near the dump point as well. So it sort of makes sense to me that we actually have we utilise that site as opposed to the one on the main drag, which is actually close to some residents. So I ask that council considers that amendment, and although we endorse Christina Street Reserve, and I understand that the work at the Eco Museum may take longer than the this 12-month trial, should it be completed before the end of the trial, can we then relocate the site back to the original site, being the Eco Museum?
Councillor Campbell, does that amendment as written is what
Yes,
you
thank you.
propose? Thank you.
Councillor Bronwyn, did you?
Oh, correction, there's also part 1 which accepts the findings.
Yes, this is just an
Oh, the
amendment to
amendment.
those 2 points,
Yes.
which will then become the substantive.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Councillor Campbell has covered most of the points, and it will provide us with a more positive outcome.
Question.
Yes, Councillor Cavoni.
The Brunswick Showground site, there was problems with the retic, or there was concern with regards to the retic. Do you have a particular area in mind, Councillor Campbell? We
I
were
do.
talking about the tennis club.
No, after my site visit, there is some hard standing behind the tennis courts. I don't know what the purpose of that was for, but it's there's.
So you're not being specific here, that's all?
Well, I can be if you like. Yeah, that particular site. I don't know what you would call it, behind the tennis courts, the hard standing located behind the tennis courts.
Well, I guess if you put on non-reticulated areas, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Happy for that.
So Councillor Campbell endorses the Brunswick Junction Showground site on non-reticulated areas. Is that the wording?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
If we, question?
Councillor Bronwyn.
Yeah. Could we be a little more specific? I mean, could we delineate an area that these vehicles are meant to go to, and therefore just say in the delineated area, and then we could put some signs up saying where they could actually park?
That will form part of the operational aspect of the implementation of the trial. Without an identified site and location map to be able to map that, I would say that on non-reticulated areas, staff can take direction from that, knowing what the intent is, unless Mr. Ball has anything further.
Just seeking a point of clarification, we're referring to just the bitumised area and none of the grassed area?
I would, if that site has the ability for the 3 to 4 areas to be marked out on that site, I would prefer that, and then it keeps it off the grassed area, which was a concern.
Yeah, that area appears to have sufficient area, and we can spatially define it to the land that is bitumised immediately adjoining the existing toilet block associated with the tennis club. A long way of spatially defining it. So yeah, there is the potential for that to occur. Non-reticulated area immediately adjoining the bitumised previous playing courts would probably be a way that we could define it.
Side show alley area.
On the reticulated areas, including non-reticulated areas, including the bitumised area, immediately adjoining. Just get the ablution facilities associated with the Brunswick Tennis Club. Yep. Facilities associated with the Brunswick Tennis Club.
Yeah, it's fine.
Councillor Burgoyne, did you have a question?
I'm just wondering if I'm the only one that thinks maybe a trial in one area that could end up being a trial in a totally different area is worth having a trial at all, or should we just wait until the endorsed area becomes available? Or is that me being silly?
Let you answer that, Mr. President.
Councillor Caprigo, did you have a question?
I have a question, Mr. President, thanks. We recently had a large function on that showground area. Did we sustain any damage at that time? Like if we had, you know, what's stopping people just parking where they do now, where there's caravans? I see caravans parked there all the time. I don't know whether they book the land or not, but there's clubs go in there all the time. And I mean, as a caravan owner, you know, I'd rather be on nice green grass under some shady trees than on a hot tarmac, especially in summertime. So if we're going to provide a facility, we want to provide a facility that's inviting and, you know, gets people to stop there.
Through Mr. Chairman, I'm not aware of any damage that's been sustained to the reticulation of the grass as a consequence of any recent large events. Probably being cheeky, but in non-reticulated areas, including the bitumised area. So if I was reading that, I would put my van on the bitumen and use the non-reticulated grass that's adjoining it. So hopefully I was trying to kill two birds with one stone. But yes, so that's how I interpret it, to have a nice hard stand on which to park your van and use the lawn areas.
Okay. Any other questions? Debate? Councillor Campbell?
Oh, I think that's enough being said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll put the amendment. Is anyone against the amendment? One. Okay, amendment carried. Now it becomes the substantive. Sorry. Yep. Okay, councillors, likely any more discussion? Any more questions? Okay, we'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion's carried 10-2. Okay, item 12.5. 12.5.1 Tender T062022 Pool Tiling Variation to Budget. We have an officer recommendation. Move Councillor Farney, second Councillor Bromman. Any questions? Councillor Caprigo.
Thanks, Mr. President. I have to be apologetic. I haven't had a really good look at the scope of work and how the remediation work's going to be done. But speaking from experience, I'd like to be certain that we pay the variation, but we're not going to have a reoccurring event. And looking briefly through the scope of work this afternoon, to me it sounds like this is not the best solution for preventing that crack from reoccurring. So I just would like to say that I'd urge Shire staff to really have a good look at the scope, and that I'm not against spending the money, but I want to make sure that the way they fix it is fixed correctly, that we won't have that crack reopening again. because looking at what I read in the report, looks like this has happened more than once. So,
through the Chair, thank you, Councillor. So the remediation works have already completed, and the testing on that has been conducted, and it has come back as sufficient across what's been assessed by 4 different consultants, and all that information and reporting has been provided in your attachments. So it's a type of Sikaflex as well as this METS metabolic membrane that's been used specifically to attach the type of tile for this pool. The previous crack wasn't fixed appropriately, and so that was the original issue when we did pull the tiles up this time, and has caused a lot of problems over the last few years. There is a 10 to 15 years expectation that we'll get out of that from completing these works as well.
too late.
Councillor Bronwyn.
Thank you, Mr. President. I must admit, when I looked at the original design, I was quite surprised that what looked like the drainage pit for the pool was square in its design, where normally that would never occur. You usually use a round because it deflects any stress, where it's square you always get cracking off the corners. So I just wanted to make sure that we weren't repeating that issue in relation to the drainage area, and that we had redesigned that part of it to reduce stress by allowing stress to run off the curves.
I'll continue, so through the Chair, and apologies if I do need to take anything on notice and get the technical advice back from the aquatics team that are running with this. So Adrian Dunn is on site on a daily basis, so he's the project lead from the appointed consultants, and he's providing a lot of guidance to every step along the way. They did do some pressure testing on the pool, on the shell as well, and that came back through the reports as sufficient. The way the pool was constructed originally, it's actually doesn't have the adjoinments, and it's not to this to current day specifications. So it's actually goes really deep, really quickly, and that causes a lot of pressure at the deep end of the pool. So the crack that we actually did identify is not consistent with any crack that you would find in today's standard. I suppose in response to any further variations, the tiles were completed, the bottom layer of the tiles was completed on Friday. It takes 3 weeks for that to cure. So now would be a really great time to know if there was any further concerns before we commence filling the pool in about 3 weeks' time, 2 weeks' time now, sorry, at which point will be the next test, whether or not this has worked and if there will be any further variations to the project.
Okay, any other questions or queries? Councillor Boney, you happy? Okay, I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? The motion is carried. Item 13, elected members' motions of which previous notice has been given is nil. Item 14, notice of motion for the following meeting. Nil. Item 15, questions by members of which due notice has been given is nil. Item 16, reports of members to be uploaded by the LG Hub. Councillor Lovett and Councillor Dickinson, ahead of the rest of us, well done. Item 17, new business of an urgent nature, as introduced by decision of the meeting. Is nil. Item 18, matters behind closed doors. We have moved Councillor Burgoyne, second Councillor Caboni, that council will move behind closed doors. I'll put the motion. Is anyone against the motion? Motion is carried 12-0.
Back in the cupboard.
The brain.
Okay, item 19, and welcome Mr Jones, hiding up the back corner there. As there's been no further business to discuss, we'll declare the meeting closed at 5:06. Thank everyone for their attendance, and enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy celebrations.